Right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. I know how full your days are, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. The connections that you build in this community of practice are just as valuable as the information and the resources that we have to share. So please take a minute to drop your name, your program name, and the district that you contract with into the chat. And please do feel free to connect with one another during the call and afterwards as well. For those of you returning, welcome back. And for anyone joining us for the first time, we are so glad that you're here. My name is Cindy Shields, and I'm a policy analyst for early care and education at Advocates for Children of New Jersey. And I'm really happy to help to hold this space for all of you to connect and network with other early care and education leaders working in the public preschool space in New Jersey. Just a bit about me in case you're new. Prior to joining ACNJ in 2024, I was a provider for 31 years, holding every position from teacher to executive director at a YMCA, where we served over 1,000 children daily in 28 licensed programs, serving children from birth through 13 years of age. I've worked in both Abbott and preschool expansion districts, and I understand the challenges that you face every day. This community of practice grew out of the momentum from the community-based private provider conference in October of 2025, and it was created to give public preschool providers like you a space to connect, share ideas, and strengthen New Jersey's mixed delivery preschool system. Because so many of the challenges that you face are shared across programs and communities, we hope that this group can be a place for honest conversation, mutual support, and practical problem solving. I am going to drop our group norms in the chat along with the agenda for today. And then I'll introduce our speaker and we can get moving. Okay, now I would like to introduce Jennifer Nicosia she is the Early Childhood Special Education Coordinator from the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education. She has a great presentation for us today, including Q&A, called Coffee and Collaboration. Jennifer, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Sure. Good morning. Thank you, Cindy. Before I share my screen, I wanted to at least just introduce myself to all of you. My name is Jennifer Nicosia. I work at the New Jersey Department of Education, and I work out of the Office of Special Education, in particular preschool. And as the State Early Childhood Special Education Coordinator, or ECSE, because it's a mouthful. My position is mostly about supporting students with IEPs, right, ages 3 to 5, and their families across the district. I'd like to say that 90% of the position is really about professional development and technical assistance across the state. And when I talk with you today, I also I am representing my Office of Special Education, but I also collaborate, which obviously we should be doing, but very often with the Office of Preschool, right, out of the Division of Early Childhood Services, which is a separate division and a separate office. So my office doesn't oversee preschool expansion aid. However, we work closely with that office. And so I really wanted to set the tone for that with you as we speak today. I do have some slides and a little set of questions from this group. And so I'm just really going to take it from there. And this is a conversation. So I looked in the norms. I think feel free to use your usual way. But I'm very open and I'll do my best. And I want to just say I won't know everything. And there'll be some things that I might not be able to answer. But I will certainly get that answer to you either in an email or at a later time. So let me share my screen and let's see. It worked before when Cindy and I did it. So let's see if I can get it to work again. I don't see the share. Oh, here we go. Got it. Okay. So this is just for today. It's not so much a presentation, but it is a little bit of a guide to how I was hoping to spend my morning or the time that I have with you this morning. I do have my coffee, so I hope some of you have that as well. And I was hoping to make this a little bit more of coffee and collaboration, but really maybe like a beginning, because I know Cindy had mentioned to me there are a lot of great, valid questions. So I thought today would be the beginning of a conversation. And then some of what we talk about could possibly be used moving forward in an actual presentation or an information session. So if you're all agreeable to that, I'm here to also learn about your questions, hear from you, and that's kind of where my office uses that information as we move forward in how we execute professional development and technical assistance, or the collaboration that we initiate or request from our preschool office. So please know that that's how important it is. So what I did today was I just put together a little bit of an agenda, which I was hoping to make this a little bit fun. So either if you're a coffee or tea person, hoping you have that with you. I have mine. And I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about supporting all preschoolers, and what that kind of means from my perspective. Then going into some of the pre-gathered questions that you actually provided me with. And I'm going to do the best I can to talk about these questions that have to do with foundations of special education, things like child find and partnership, some more specific to the referral compliance part, although I'm not the compliance office. I do, I can basically respond to and address things that are really preschool compliance related to the best of my ability within my position. And then after we wrap up, I'll kind of take a little bit of I'll take a few minutes to just hear, did I answer your questions? Maybe I didn't answer them all. And then I'll take those, and I'm considering those to be still brewing, and things that that will be important to me to take back to the office and get some more answers. So hold on one second. There we go. Okay, so for all of you, with the promise of being here this morning as I answer some of these questions, here is my position and my email. So when I do these engagements, it also opens up the door for you to please contact me. I don't think that I've heard before that the state sometimes doesn't always have that type of open door, but I really do in my office. So if you now leaving here today, you have questions, and I could guide you in any way or guide you to the right person, I will certainly do that. So keep my email. And so what I'll do is I have 3 areas that Cindy and I spoke about specifically. And we will talk about the questions. I have some specifically for inclusive excellence for every child. I don't have that many on ECSE essentials and core practices, but I'll touch on that a little bit. And then I have some questions on navigating the path to support. And so what I'll do is I'll read you the questions, and I'm hoping to answer them, and then maybe I'll stop and we can have a little bit of a conversation, but keeping in mind we have about 30 minutes together. Now, if you look on the bottom of the screen, there's a QR code there. If it's working and you didn't submit a question and you want to, you can go ahead and do that, and I'll collect those after, and those will also be the still brewing. Hopefully that should take you to a form, and maybe we'll spark some more questions and conversation. Does anyone have any questions before I read some of the questions? Okay. And Cindy, you'll help me just in case, because you know how our screens are. I'm not sure that I could see everyone, but I definitely will look for raised hands, or if you see something in the chat, please stop me, and I will be responsive.
Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you. So the first one is, these are topics. And so I want to give you a little bit of an understanding. Although I can certainly come back and present what's needed, what we did was I took 3 topic areas that seem to be high topics or hot topics that come up very often. And so I'm going to try to do my best. And the question here was, please list any questions you have about promoting inclusive excellence for all preschool children, including children with disabilities within general education settings. And we had one question, which was, I'm curious about how Child Find is a partnership among the general education teacher, parents, special education department, and agencies at district and state levels. What advice might the DOE like for the first and have for first and second year teachers about the Child Find process as they begin their careers? So that was the question. And I have a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I'm going to do my best to stick to the point. And then if I can, I might share with Cindy a little bit more. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about when we talk about Child Find, and I know that we all know it's a legal mandate, but I did want to share that in practice, it really is more of what I want to call an ecosystem or a joint collaboration, and something that neither entity could do on their own. So when I look to specifically about Child Find, I do want to say that it's the child study team, right, who holds the legal responsibility, to evaluate and determine eligibility. However, when we're looking at private provider sites, Head Start sites with general education teachers and the parents, I want to say in those first and second year teachers, I think my message would be that they are, you, all of you and those teachers are more important, because you are the critical first identifiers. Those teachers in your sites are the ones that are really finding the children. Okay. So without that observational data from the classroom, without those first and second year and veteran teachers having concerns or having concerns from a parent, then like that whole system of Child Find, we really just can't move forward. So that was the first thing. That's my first response. I'm going to read one more thing that I wrote, and then I'm going to stop for more conversation. Specifically for first and second year teachers, I want to say I've been doing this and been in the area of special ed for, well, now I guess I'll say 25 plus years. And I was a special education teacher. I don't think I had as many hats as Cindy had, but I've been a principal and a director. I've been a supervisor and in local education agencies. I've partnered with private provider sites as the preschool and admin oversight. And so when I think about being a first or second year teacher or training new, it's really to start to understand and sort of, if we could, get away from that thought process of diagnosing a child, but more advising those teachers how to look for what I want to say and reference is like this objective, descriptive data, really observational data. What is the child? Really have them have their sensors on in those classrooms when you are talking to these teachers about what exactly is the child doing or not doing in comparison to developmental milestones. And I'm going to be careful here, but also in comparison to same aged peers. And so if you take anything away from what first or second year teachers, what I think is core is that understanding. And then understanding that there is Child Find and there is a process and a system, but that what I want to say is that there are steps along the way that can be implemented within a classroom while that process is happening. So I really leave you with, and you're going to let me know if it's someone's question and you want to tell me if I responded accurately or not, that it is more the people in the classroom. And if you want to talk specifically about a request for an evaluation, I think you all know that can come from anyone, right? We know that that's the law. But what I want to say is the way that request for referral is packaged is really very important. So the more information that could be compiled, the more observational data, the more of comparing that child to same age peers and really having that concrete data is what will make that process smoother. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second and ask, does anyone want to comment about what I said? Or is there another question about this specific scenario or question? Or if it was your question and you're here and you want to let me know if let's see, Dr. Latte.
Hi, I'm
Did I say
Avani.
that right?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. And thank you for adjusting that question. That was my question. And I appreciate that. And I think the role that I have, particularly in the alternate route processes, I have teachers from all over the state in many different settings. And that's why I asked it in that way. Because I'm very, I just want to make sure that I'm touching all the points. So thank you for that summary. That was wonderful. When I have candidates that are in private settings, do they also work with district or would it be that they would go directly through their private setting right to the DOE? I just want to make sure I understand the private track a bit more.
Sure. So, I mean, I think you all know this better than me, but we know that each site should have a partner child study team from the district, right? So I want to say it's everybody. I want to really, and I think that this is the way I lived it, is it's everyone's responsibility, but someone's going to take it, right? So when you are at a private provider site, it's really, I think, most vital to have that everyone knows who the child study team is, who those contacts are. And then the way that I saw it work the best is when I was the preschool oversight, I worked very closely with the private provider director. And we really supported one another and the teachers at the site, at the private provider site, in how to utilize the system, right? In how to, and we would invite them in to learn about the process, right? To learn about preschool intervention and referral, to learn about multi-tiered systems of supports. And then when it was the right time, how to, right, put together a referral to child study team for an evaluation. So I think that it's really important to just first start with who are those people and what is the process? Because I don't know that everyone knows that. And I think we do, but I think it's important to go back to the beginning and ask those questions and make sure everyone knows. Is that helpful? Okay. All right. Does anyone else want to chime in before I move on to question 2? Okay. So I think what I'm going to do, if it's okay, I'm going to leave off the presentation.
Jennifer, you just muted yourself, I think, by accident. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. So I was saying I was going to leave the slide off, if that's okay, and talk to so I could see all your faces. Is that okay with you, Cindy?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the next question was, how do we get better support from districts to support children in the Head Start classroom rather than transferring the child out? How do we ensure that districts are paying Head Start and other providers for the children with IEPs since they are not often included in the contract? This is very timely. This is a question that I will be very upfront that I'll be able to answer in pieces and then really let you know that that's where that collaboration is coming in, as far as really the funding. And so I would be remiss if I didn't sit before all of you, and I know my time is coming to an end, but I do want you to know that at the department and in my office, we are very cognizant and we are very aware that there is a confusion and much needed clarification as far as preschool expansion funding and how to support the funding of students with IEPs in those settings. I don't want to disappoint you in telling you that I'm going to have those answers right now today, but I do want to say to you that it's really important for the funding piece to get all the right people at the table. So when I say that, if you are partnered with a district, having again conversations, looking at the contract, having the superintendent, the preschool oversight, yourself, and a business administrator, someone who's making the decisions about funding and really understands the fiscal side. Because what does have to happen, and I don't say that I am the expert in this, but what does have to happen is there needs to be an understanding of how to meet the needs of the district so that you could support those children, right? So you have to look at three things. The business administrator needs to come in because that person needs to understand how to allocate funds from three places: preschool expansion, right? We know that that's one place. Then IDEA, which is another source of funding, and then local. Okay, so it's important, if I leave you with anything, is to start those conversations about those three buckets of money and how can those all be used effectively to support having children with IEPs in those classrooms. That's the best advice I could give in the time that I have. I'm going to stop for a second and see, is there anyone who wants to chime in or ask a more or talk about that one in particular? The three buckets, sure. There's PEA, which is preschool expansion aid, right? That's the one that is most known about when you're in a contract with a district. That's where the money is coming from the state for meeting your universe, right? But we know that that money is for children in the gen ed without IEPs. The second bucket is IDA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, right? There's money coming in from the district that goes to the district for those children with IEPs. That's called IDA. So that's another bucket. And then there's the local and general. So I would say looking at those three buckets, naming them and having a conversation as to how those are all being used, right? I know it's not exactly answering the question per se, but it's a start. Okay, so then I just want to get to the second part of this. So then how do we better support, get better support from districts to support children, right? So the way that I envision this was to really look at least restrictive environment and starting with the foundations of the law, which no one can really, you can't really, you interpret the law, but you have to follow the law, right? So I always go back to, that's the conversation I would have with, if we want to, as a private provider site, and this is where my office could come in a little bit more too, in the spirit of least restrictive environment, if we want to really implement it, we need to carry the services to where the child is, right? So I guess, again, I would start the conversations with not after the year is over, but the year before, start to talk about how you can bring the services to the child. How can the staff that's needed, and I know you know this, but it doesn't always happen. How can we start with, so for a specific example would be when I was the preschool oversight, I would start actually with placing related service providers at a site. Okay. And that sort of started the conversation of there's less travel. We can now place students at those sites that do have services. We don't have to worry about travel. So it's just an exact example of how to start having the vision of that this is a place that we want our kids to be. So how can we change our thoughts of how to make this the place that they stay? Well, then we need to bring the people and the services to them. So I do encourage you, again, I don't have the exact answers for you with this, but I say to have those conversations, go back, look at your PEA contract, right? Look at the conversations and is there an addendum between your site and the district into how you are receiving funds for kids with IEPs? Is there information about how children who need therapy are getting it if they're at your site? Okay, so that's some of the answer to that. The question in the chat, and Cindy, you'll let me know because I did have one more question from previously. But the question in the chat is the district allowed to offer services only in public school buildings and remove children from private providers? So that's a loaded question and a very valuable one. So I'm going to answer this the best I can. Legally, yes, right? As long as a district is meeting requirements of providing like a free appropriate education, right? If it's a child with an IEP or meeting their preschool universe, if it's a kid, in gen ed, and providing the services, they can say that we're going to have this child in the public school. As a practice, ethically, and what's in the best interest, I would say removing children from whatever site they're in and where they've become accustomed and adjusted and have relationships is never a best practice. So we should be looking at how to keep them there at all, whenever possible. So I think that goes back to the initial one is, are we thinking ahead of time how to meet the needs of the children in the sites so that we don't have to remove them? Unless there's an extenuating circumstance, of course. Okay, so if it's okay, I had two more questions. Should I address them or would you like me to save
Absolutely.
and come back?
Yep. Nope. You can keep going. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay. All right. So this question was about navigating the path to support. And the question was, what direction or assistance do I give to parents to have their child evaluated to see what services they may need? The doctor did not pick up on it. So do I direct the parents to? That's a really good question. And the answer is yes. Because, right, child find, the law, we talked about the first and second year teachers. It is within your right as a teacher or a director or in any capacity of education, if you are concerned in the right way, right? You're not diagnosing, you're not saying there's a condition, but you should absolutely, if you have concerns about a child and think they need to have further evaluation, you should feel confident. And if someone's telling you otherwise, you should still feel confident in that you are doing right by that child by communicating to the right people that you have concerns and there needs to be further evaluation, whether that be more screening at the pre-referral, right, in MTSS systems, if it's sending towards more child study team evaluation, The answer is yes. And you should direct the parents to maybe look more, have a conversation, be very open, don't overstep, right? Don't give more information than needed. But I would always say that it's within your right and you should be identifying when there are concerns. And I'll tell you something else. I'm a mom of a child with multiple disabilities, and he went through the whole system. He's in 5th grade now, going to middle. And many doctors missed many things. And I went with my mom's special ed gut. And it never did me wrong. So go with your gut. Because you are the experts. The doctor's right. You need to tell them the information. So I would say tell the parent what you know, and then they can bring that to the doctor. And then that should prompt the doctor to look a lot deeper than they probably are at that point. So I see hands and hearts. So I think I answered that one well. Okay, I have one more, Cindy. Okay. Okay, so this one is, wait a minute. I lost track here. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. This one is another very valid, and I'll touch on it the best I can. The concerns that my general education teachers present often arise for children who are from multilingual communities and homes. Embracing the community, children's home life, and family experiences in our American culture is tantamount. Well, isn't it? Yep. As we prepare our 1st and 2nd year teachers for their roles and relationships, what is the special education's department position on diversity? How strongly will the special ed department articulate a commitment to diverse learning and developmental needs? So I'm here representing the department. And I want to say that it's very strong. And I want to say, especially in early childhood and preschool, there are several policies that I could share with you. I could send them to Cindy. There's the child inclusion policy that talks all about inclusion and diversity and culturally responsive teaching. I'd say that in the time I've been at the department in the last 3 years, there is a very, very strong commitment, especially now with the new commissioner and governor, to meeting the needs of multilingual learners, of children with IEPs. I think that there's a lot of guidance, and I could share too, that's coming out that is a lot about language and disability and understanding the differences, and that these things can be happening simultaneously. But a lot of the practices that I think the department and the Office of Special Ed can articulate through commitment is in more of the practices that we support. So I'll give you a perfect example. I think the mindset is embracing the primary language is what we really is the mindset, and seeing it as an attribute. That's one thing. The other is really proactively working with private provider sites and districts like yourselves in what I told you we do in the beginning is maybe more professional development on how to support your teachers in really understanding the nuances. You meet the needs of so many different children. So I think through the practices. So for example, through us at the department teaching about multi-tiered systems of supports or universal design for learning, or I'll say high leverage practices. These are all the way that I think the department is showing our commitment and articulating that it is very important and it is a mission to meet the needs of kids that you're teaching in these sites. And so what I could do is I could share a little bit more of the inclusion policy. I could share a little bit more of some guidance that comes directly from my office, and that might give you some more of an understanding of the commitment. But I hope that I talked to you enough to know that there's a commitment to support you. I think that's part of why I'm also here. And Cindy is really an advocate for all of you, and how to meet the needs of these kids. So I'm going to just take a sec here, Cindy, and I'm going to look at the chat and then finish it up. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So in the past, contracting providers always had support for special needs children with appropriate intervention staff from the district. Suddenly, things changed 2 years ago when providers were told that special needs staff were hard to find. So providers were banned from having special needs children, which had a dire impact on our enrollment. The reality is parents refuse services if their child must move out of the provider site after the evaluation indicating a need for service. This does not meet the needs of the child or the family. Will this be discussed and addressed in your office? I'd be curious to hear about the change in like what occurred. I've been in the position for about 3 years, but over the 2 years. But I do know, in my experience and from this question, that there's so many levels here. So I think having conversations with the families about being more comfortable about having their children's needs met in the site where they are. I think this goes back again to having the discussion with the district to be able to have those services come to the private provider sites. And why can't that happen? I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that that's part of it. But then the other thing about parents refusing services. Let me just ask you, Lorraine, is this that the parents refusing services if it means that the child, because the district saying the child has to come back in district rather than staying at the site? Well, that is a yes. Well, that's a conundrum. What I would say is, again, this is where it's very important, and I could reach out, or Lorraine, you could reach out to me also after today. I think the conversation is how can we maintain that child? Can their needs be met in the site where they are? And having a really deep conversation about why, and can that happen so that the child can stay at that site. I don't know how much my office could address it individually, but I think systemically we could address and have more conversations like this, right? Talking about how can we handle scenarios like this. And I think it starts with the relationship that you have with the district, and then maybe having a nice conversation with the parents about I don't know, I guess just having the open forum, open conversation, and having it be about the child, right? Going back to that, it's about the child, not about the funds, not about the district, not about the site. But that one for me is to be continued, if that's okay, Lorraine. So hold my email. So Cindy, those were the questions I had. I know there could probably be so many more. And just based off of these, I could put together a presentation. But can I ask you, do you have anything else for me or something that you'd like as a group to happen while you have me here before I leave you for today? Obviously, the conversations, being the messenger to the department, I can do that. Opening up conversations with my preschool PEA colleagues, I could do that too. But other than that,
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Let's see if anybody else has any questions or the situation, like Lorraine had, that they're looking for some guidance in how to best approach or handle. I want to make the most of our time that we have with Jennifer while we have her here with us.
You know what, Lorraine? Cindy just prompted me. I remember one of the things I did when a scenario like this happened was we put in writing a little bit about how important the site has been to the family and the child and the relationships that the child has cultivated and how that site in particular meets the needs of that family, and how the site actually brought some supports and services that in district wasn't able to really provide in the same way. I don't know if that's helpful, but I know that I did some of that when I'd have scenarios, and it did help. Sometimes it helps to see things in writing and to really bring it back to the individual child level. So sorry, that just occurred to me.
Thank you so much for your time today. The thought that you put into this presentation and the time that you took to answer all these questions individually was very helpful. And I think the information that you provided also was very helpful. As we proceed with this group, I'm sure that we'll be reaching out to you again. And I think the format of this presentation was actually pretty great. And it looks like everybody's pretty happy with the information that you shared. We have lots of clapping and hearts. So I think, yeah, we are in a great spot. And again, thank you for your time today. And I'll be back in touch for some follow-ups. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Jennifer will also be joining us at the 2026 Provider Conference on October 8th as a workshop presenter. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. Save that date. Registration will be coming out in June.